It's starting to rain again. The rain had slacked up a little bit. The back motors of the ship are just holding it just enough to keep it from... It bursts into flames. Get it started. It's crashing terrible. Oh, my, get out of the way, please. It's bursting into flames, and it's falling on the mooring mast and all the folks between it. This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's like 400 or 500 feet into the sky, and it's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the flame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the passengers screaming around it. I told you, I can't talk to people. His friends are on there. I can't talk, ladies and gentlemen. Honest, it just laying down massive smoking wreckage. And everybody can't hardly breathe and talk and screaming. Lady, I'm sorry. Honestly, I can hardly breathe. I'm going to step inside while I cannot see it. Charlie, that's terrible. Listen, folks, I'm going to have to stop for a minute because I've lost the voice. This is the worst thing I've ever witnessed.
Pictorial record of the tragedy of the Hindenburg. May 6, 1937, and the airship, soon to be a twisted mass of metal as a result of a fire that occurred at Lakehurst, New Jersey, even as hundreds hailed the dirigible's arrival from Hamburg, Germany, passes over New York City. Catastrophe in the making. Storm clouds gather over the Jersey coast, and Lakehurst is a welcome sight to Zeppelin passengers and crew. Winds whip the mooring lines. Then, as its passengers watch, tragedy strikes. A terrific explosion in the tail fin of the dirigible, and passengers and crew hurl themselves out of the ship into the ground. Navy and Army men risk their lives as the fire eats its way through 7 million feet of inflammable hydrogen gas and leaves a steel skeleton in its wake. Only a miracle saved those who were fortunate enough to quit the ship in time. But 36 of the 97 people aboard perished in the most horrible air disaster of all time. Hundreds of tons of fuel oil burned for an hour after the explosion, the dense black smoke giving a funereal touch to the sky that sped the Hindenburg to its doom. Only 10 minutes, and the airship would have been moored safely, but it required less than 1 minute for it to turn from a luxury ship to an incandescent death trap. Included in the list of fatalities was Captain Ernst Lehmann, commander of the Hindenburg, who perished as the pride of the skies reached its journey's end.
Just a year ago that New Yorkers first beheld the silvery spectacle of Germany's luxury airliner Hindenburg, soaring majestically past Manhattan skyline, having spanned the North Atlantic in the record-shattering time of 61.5 hours from its hangar at Friedrichshafen to its American port of call at Lakehurst, New Jersey. Today, with veteran Captain Ernest Lehman aboard in an advisory capacity, the greatest lighter-than aircraft ever built nears the completion of her 21st Atlantic crossing, her first of this year. Encountering storms and headwinds during this ill-fated voyage, the giant dirigible noses toward the Lakehurst mooring mast today, having just ridden out a brief electrical disturbance, and now that the wind has subsided, she releases ballast, preliminary to easing her vast hulk into the hands of the Navy's ground crew, awaiting the landing lines by which she is gently drawn to earth. Her 50 passengers impatient, eager to arrive at a journey's end. Scarcely 300 feet above the ground now, portholes open, landing lines are thrown. Hovering so close to Earth, one is impressed by her mammoth size, her great framework encasing 7 million cubic feet of highly inflammable hydrogen. Careful maneuvering by expert hands have all but warped her into the hangar. Motors are idling. All seem ship-shape to the scurrying crew below, when suddenly... time than it takes to tell, the scene is one of horror as the ship has slowly sagged to earth and the flames have enveloped the entire structure. Many of those aboard having jumped to escape cremation. Estimate of its toll on human life stands at 50 dead, with many of the 50 persons pulled from the flames not expected to live. A nightmare of 20 seconds. Incredible it seems that the specter of death could stalk so quickly, so completely. For here in this appalling tragedy is written the worst disaster in aviation history.
But tragedy bars and finally ends their grim history.
Take you now to Lakehurst, New Jersey.
The ship is riding majestically toward us. It's practically standing still now. They've dropped ropes out of the nose of the ship. It bursts into flames. Get it started, get it started. It's fighting and it's crashing. It's crashing terrible. Oh my, get out of the way, please. It's burning, bursting into flames and it's falling on the mooring mast and all the folks between us. This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's like 20, 400 or 500 feet into the sky. It's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the frame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the fence.
The fabrics that covered early aircraft are gradually replaced in the 1930s.
Advisory capacity, the greatest lighter-than aircraft ever built, nears the completion of her 21st Atlantic crossing, her first of this year. Encountering storms and headwinds during this ill-fated voyage, the giant dirigible noses toward the Lakehurst mooring mast today, having just ridden out a brief electrical disturbance, and now that the wind has subsided, she releases ballast, preliminary to easing her vast hulk into the hands of the Navy's ground crew, awaiting the landing lines by which she is gently drawn to earth. Her 50 passengers impatient, eager to arrive at a journey's end. Scarcely 300 feet above the ground now, portholes open, landing lines are thrown. Hovering so close to Earth, one is impressed by her mammoth size, her great framework encasing 7 million cubic feet of highly inflammable hydrogen. Careful maneuvering by expert hands have all but warped her into the hangar. Motors are idling. All seem ship-shape to the scurrying crew below, when suddenly... less time than it takes to tell, the scene is one of horror as the ship has slowly sagged to earth and the flames have enveloped the entire structure. Many of those aboard having jumped to escape cremation. Estimate of its toll on human life stands at 50 dead, with many of the 50 persons pulled from the flames not expected to live. A nightmare of 20 seconds. Incredible it seems that the specter of death could stalk so quickly, so completely. For here in this appalling tragedy is written the worst disaster in aviation history.
It's practically standing still now. They've dropped rope out of the nose of the ship. It bursts into... Get it started, get it started. It's fighting and it's crashing. It's crashing terrible. Oh, my, get out of the way, please. It's burning, bursting into flames and it's falling on the mooring mast and all the folks between us. This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's like 20, 400 or 500 feet into the sky, and it's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the flame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the plans.
The rigid airship not only has its part in the history of aircraft, but can fulfill important functions in future military and commercial air transportation. The first thought in many minds when talking about rigid airships is the terrible accident of the Hindenburg. After a successful career as a passenger and cargo ship, the Hindenburg on May 6, 1937, caught fire at Lakehurst. Miraculously, most of those aboard the Hindenburg were saved. 62 out of 97 came out of that inferno alive. The cause of the fire has never been determined. The Board of Investigation reported,
The theory that a brush discharge, St. Elmo's fire, ignited a mixture of hydrogen appears most probable.
other well-qualified authorities feel that the fire was an act of sabotage. However, it must be kept in mind that the big flaw, and inevitably the fatal defect in the German scheme of things, was that these big ships had to be inflated with hydrogen, which is a highly inflammable gas. In any case, the disaster put an end for the time being to the commercial operation of rigid airships. Back in 1890, the LZ-129, the Hindenburg, was placed in service in May 1936. From May to October of that year, the Hindenburg made 10 transatlantic round trips between Frankfurt and Lakehurst, plus several round trips to South America. Accommodations included freshly prepared meals, staterooms, shower, promenades, writing room, lounge with grand piano, smoking room, and bar. Noiseless and vibrationless, the big airship provided the acknowledged maximum comfort in oceanic travel. Besides passengers and mail, the ship carried a great variety of cargo, ranging from canaries to automobiles, airplanes, and heavy machinery. Between March and December 1936, the Hindenburg flew over 200,000 miles, carried 3,000 passengers, and 41,000 pounds of mail and freight. She never missed a scheduled flight and never turned back. The Germans had demonstrated that the commercial rigid airship was an extremely comfortable method of travel, far faster than the steamship, regular in schedules, and reasonable in price. But even more important, the rigid airship was safe. Why did Germany fare so well, whereas England and the United States had airship trouble? Experience and continuity seemed to be the principal reasons. Only 157 rigid airships were ever built, and Germany built 138 of them. England built 16, and the United States only 3. Though we have learned and contributed much, the United States has remained in the pioneering stage in the use of big airships. Summarizing briefly, official United States interest in rigid airships began with Admiral Dewey
How did this tragedy happen to the Hindenburg? The world wants to know. And the highest United States authorities are driving to learn why 20 died at the very instant of landing the world's greatest airship. Here is the end of the first trip of 1937, end of all things for the Hindenburg, last of her 21 American voyages. Now at twilight comes the dreadful end. She is over Lakehurst, nosing in as on so many trips before. Nearly 50 laughing passengers are at the windows from which they have just looked down on millions watching from New York. There's nothing wrong. The ship levels off, drops her water ballast. The ground crew is ready underneath. It's all right, as it has always been all right. She drops her line. This voyage is over, and tonight she is going back to Germany. And then... And so perishes the great Hindenburg at the home port of the vanished Shenandoah, the Akron, and the Macon.
It was just a year ago that New Yorkers first beheld the silvery spectacle of Germany's luxury airliner Hindenburg, soaring majestically past Manhattan skyline, having spanned the North Atlantic in the record-shattering time of 61.5 hours from its hangar at Friedrichshafen to its American port of call at Lakehurst, New Jersey. Today, with veteran Captain Ernest Lehman aboard in an advisory capacity, the greatest lighter-than aircraft ever built nears the completion of her 21st Atlantic crossing, her first of this year. Encountering storms and headwinds during this ill-fated voyage, the giant dirigible noses toward the Lakehurst mooring mast today, having just ridden out a brief electrical disturbance, and now that the wind has subsided, she releases ballast, preliminary to easing her vast hulk into the hands of the Navy ground crew, awaiting the landing lines by which she is gently drawn to earth. Her 50 passengers impatient, eager to arrive at a journey's end. Scarcely 300 feet above the ground now, portholes open, landing lines are thrown. Hovering so close to Earth, one is impressed by her mammoth size, her great framework encasing 7 million cubic feet of highly inflammable hydrogen. Careful maneuvering by expert hands have all but warped her into the hangar. Motors are idling. All seem ship-shape to the scurrying crew below, when suddenly...
Get out!
less time than it takes to tell, the scene is one of horror as the ship has slowly sagged to earth and the flames have enveloped the entire structure, many of those aboard having jumped to escape cremation. Estimate of its toll on human life stands at 50 dead, with many of the 50 persons pulled from the flames not expected to live. A nightmare 20 seconds. Incredible it seems that the specter of death could stalk so quickly, so completely. For here in this appalling tragedy is written the worst disaster in aviation history.
The ill-fated Hindenburg on her last flight sails over New York. These pictures, made from a Pathé News plane less than 4 hours before the tragedy, show the world's largest airship heading for Lakehurst, New Jersey. Over Newark's famous auto skyway, the airship was hailed by thousands who little dreamed it was their final glimpse of the Hindenburg. Inside the silver envelope are 16 separate gas bags, each filled with hydrogen, a highly inflammable gas. From the ground, you can see the forward control cabin from which the ship is operated. The windows along the side indicate the location of the passengers' quarters, in which many were carried to a flaming death. Approaching Lakehurst, the Hindenburg appeared a conquering giant of the skies, but she proved a puny plaything in the mighty grip of fate. It almost seemed as if fate had set the stage for the horrible tragedy. A graceful craft sailing serenely to her doom. For 3 hours, the dirigible circled the landing field at Lakehurst, New Jersey, dumping more water ballast than ever before in vain efforts to level off. Again she dumps ballast, and a nervous tension grips those who are watching, for this is something unusual. There goes more ballast, but the tail is settling in spite of all that has been dumped. A grim note of impending tragedy. Finally, the landing lines are dropped. These scenes were filmed by Pathé News cameraman William Deek, and you're about to see the pictures he got when the ship exploded. Those aboard leaping for life from a flaming inferno, the actual crash of the Hindenburg, an airship destroyed in less than half a minute. Rushing to the rescue, the heroes of the tragedy dash in, heedless of danger, to help the injured to safety, while others, beyond help, perish in the flames. The blazing aftermath reveals the extent of the disaster, an inferno which became a flaming tomb, a twisted mass of the scorched skeleton of what was once a mighty airship. The Hindenburg has gone. She represented man's latest attempt to conquer the Atlantic by air. Her tragedy will not halt the march of progress. From her ashes will arise the knowledge. From her fate, the lesson that will lead to a greater and a better means of mastering the air. If so, her dead will not have died in vain.
German Zeppelin Hindenburg, Queen of the Skies, seen here from a universal newsreel camera plane as it sped over New York to its tragic end at Lakehurst, New Jersey, now lies at the Naval Air Station a twisted mass of metal. Shortly after these pictures were taken, showing the great Skyliner saluting the millions watching it from below on its first trip of the season, the huge craft exploded while docking and blazed to a fiery end, taking the lives of almost half its 99 passengers and crew. Hours late on its trip from Hamburg because of headwinds, the Zeppelin had to ride out a thunderstorm along the Jersey coast before heading for the air station and nosing its way to the mooring mast. The wind is bad and the docking is a ticklish one, but it's all a thrill for the crowd of happy passengers eager to land after their transoceanic trip. Slowly the big ship warps in and the ground crews rush for the mooring lines. In another 10 minutes or so, the great aircraft would have been snugly docked. But as the passengers crowded the windows to watch, a roar and a burst of flame near the big tail fins turned the ship into a flaming inferno. Passengers and crew, the fortunate among them, fell or jumped and were dragged to safety before the fiery furnace took their lives. Heroic work by Navy and Army men risking their lives around the white-hot skeleton snatched more than one dazed and half-burned passenger from the blazing wreckage. But for the most of those trapped in the incandescent tangle, there was no hope. It's the greatest of miracles that anyone came out of the disaster alive. 7 million cubic feet of inflammable hydrogen gas blazed up in less than a minute. The hundreds of tons of fuel oil burns for an hour or more, with its dense black smoke making a pall over the tragic scene. In all the history of air disasters, this is the worst, the most terrible. Hailed as the luxury liner of the air, the Hindenburg's horrible end has shocked the entire world. The pride of the skies reaches its journey's end.
A twisted, tangled mass of seared girders and bits of blackened fabric are all that remains of the proud luxury airliner Hindenburg that lies at the Lakehurst Naval Station. The death list is now 35, with 10, including Captain Pruss, still on the critical list. With the next morning's first light, a naval inspection board headed by Captain Haynes inspects the wreckage, as others search the still smoking ruins for a possible clue that might yield a key to the mysterious disaster. The remains of the Hindenburg will not be moved until the arrival of Germany's expert, Dr. Hugo Eckener, who heads a commission that will conduct an investigation simultaneously with the Department of Commerce. German Ambassador Hans Luther was the first Reich observer to arrive, visiting the injured at the hospital in nearby Lakewood, but refusing to comment on anything connected with the disaster. As soon as is possible, the injured who can be moved are carried to ambulances for transfer to New York, 60 miles away, so as to receive everything that medical science can offer. Swathed in bandages, they may be more than thankful for their miraculous escape from the blazing inferno of the Hindenburg. Members of the crew not seriously injured were housed in the officers' mess at the naval station. 13-year-old Werner Franz, a cabin boy, is the youngest survivor who will appear before the Department of Commerce Investigation Board that calls Commander Rosendahl, head of the naval station, as first witness. But experts believe the exact cause of the greatest of air disasters will never be known. Over the Hindenburg will loom a question mark that can never be forgotten.
The ship is no doubt bustling with activities we can see. Orders are shouted to the crew. The passengers are probably lining the windows looking down at the field ahead of them, getting their glimpse of the mooring mast. It's practically standing still now. They've dropped ropes out of the nose and has been taken a hold up down on the field by a number of men. It's starting to rain again. The rain had slacked up a little bit. The back motors of the ship are just holding it just enough to keep it from... It bursts into flames. Wait, get it started. It's crashing terrible. Oh my, get out of the way, please. It's bursting into flames and it's falling on the mooring mast and all the folks between us. This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's like 20, 400 or 500 feet into the sky. It's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the flame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the passengers screaming around.
A time of tragedies, a time seemed here to stay. Then, in 1937, the Hindenburg began her second year as a regular transatlantic service. She was truly a flying luxury liner with observation decks and lounge rooms for her passengers. Because of Germany's lack of helium, the Hindenburg was filled with explosive hydrogen. Coming in for a landing at Lakehurst, New Jersey, with 97 aboard, the Hindenburg dropped her lines. Everything seemed in perfect order when suddenly... With the flaming deaths of the Hindenburg, the majestic queens of the sky were seen no more floating in beauty above the earth. And so it ended, a disastrous air milestone of the century.
One of the most spectacular tragedies of the air age happened just 25 years ago. The German dirigible Hindenburg, coming in for a landing after a transatlantic flight, rendezvoused with disaster. Six persons died in the flaming wreckage of the proud airship. To this day, the exact cause of the explosion remains a mystery, though static electricity seems the most plausible answer. The Germans had no helium, deemed a strategic U.S. war material, and the highly inflammable hydrogen reduced the proud ship to a tangled mass of twisted metal in a few fleeting minutes. This was the worst air disaster to that time, and sounded the death knell of the dirigible.
Queen of the skies, seen here from a universal newsreel camera plane as it sped
He took command of the Naval Air Station at Lakehurst. His faith was sustained by the newest and greatest of the sky giants, the German Zeppelin Hindenburg. Rosenthal cited her record of safe Atlantic crossings and pleaded with Congress to build more dirigibles. Then came a day in May of 1937. The Hindenburg had reached Lakehurst after a voyage from Germany. Rosenthal was on the field to welcome her. Suddenly he saw a burst of flame on top of the ship. In a moment it was beyond control. The Hindenburg became a roaring mass of flames as her hydrogen gas ignited. Passengers and crewmen leaped from the windows. Rosenthal was helpless. He could only watch as the blazing mass settled to the ground. In 20 seconds, 35 people lost their lives. Aviation's worst tragedy to date. It sounded the death knell of dirigibles in the United States. The Los Angeles
captured by the eyewitness camera. Here are the pictures that made headlines, the headlines that made history. We're going to show you those pictures, and then we're going to ask you some questions. You'll have 5 seconds to answer each one. Let's see how much you know about movies' greatest headlines. May 6th, 1937. The dirigible Hindenburg, last of the great lighter-than aircraft, completes her ocean voyage from Germany and noses down to the mooring mast at a New Jersey airfield. And then, she's aflame. In seconds, the great silver cigar is a fiery inferno. Before your very eyes, this queen of the skies is consumed by tongues of flame. Here is a scene no one will ever forget. But can you remember, where did this disaster take place? It was at Lakehurst, New Jersey, that the dirigible Hindenburg burned itself into a charred ruin. A great fleet at sea. A British battleship bucks the North Atlantic storms, carrying Winston Churchill
I greet the people of America. We had a very successful flight, I admit, under favorable weather conditions. But I am convinced under all weather conditions we will make the next flight with all regularity and safety you can wish. Thank you.